Hello, everyone, and welcome to Musing, music for the adventurous listener here on CJSW 90.9 FM in Calgary. I'm your host, Janna Sailor, and on today's program, I'm delighted to bring you a conversation with Winnipeg-based violinist Elation Pauls in advance of the release of her debut solo album entitled Sustenance. In the words of the Winnipeg Free Press, she plays with heart and soul, her violin carrying us into another realm, deeply moving. In this album, Elation curates and performs a selection of original works by contemporary Canadian composers that explore personal and collective sources of vitality and joy. Truly, music as nourishment for the soul. Let's listen in. Elation is one of Canada's most sought-after chamber musicians, and collaborates with some of the biggest names in the business. She serves as principal second violin of the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra and is the founder and artistic director of the rapidly growing and thriving Rosamunda Summer Music Academy, held each year in Winnipeg. Elation, it's so wonderful to be in conversation with you today. Thank you so much for being my guest. Welcome to Musing.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Absolutely. So we've known each other for a long time. Wonderful to be interviewing you. So I'm going to start with a question that I ask many of my guest creators, and that is, how do you describe yourself as an artist and your creative output?
Wow, that's a big question. I am a violinist, and this is something that I was deeply drawn to. This is not something in my family or that I had a lot of exposure to as a young person, really. I have very vivid memories of the first time I saw a cousin of mine play the violin, and especially when the Saskatoon Symphony came to visit my school. I just remember being quite overwhelmed by the realization that these people were creating these sounds and they were not coming out of a speaker or the radio. There was nothing electronic, no chords attached. It was quite a revelation that this could happen, and I was totally drawn to the violin. We had to do a blind search in the dark for a violin teacher, and we're very lucky that violinists who had studied at Juilliard had just moved to Saskatoon and wanted students. And I've never lost that initial passion for the sound of the violin. It's very much my personal voice that I connect with, even if I prefer listening to flamenco guitar or the cello. It is very personal for me. And as an artist, the sound is at the core. That's my medium. To communicate is the goal, and to communicate the human experience and everything that we are able to express without words, and how meaningful that is to have that gift of expression without language. I feel like language can be very difficult at times to use. It can often be used to divide or tear down or argue. I think it's also a special thing to have a realm where you can put out a message and each listener can have it mean something different to them on a deeper level, and they can take from it what is good and helpful for them. Yeah, I guess those are some of the things.
I love that. What you said, where the listeners can take what is helpful to them, is very much at the core of my initial introduction to the concept of your album, Sustenance. Can you tell us a bit about that? I've had a chance to have a sneak peek at the album, and it's really stunning. I've been hearing about this through your network for the last while, and I'm happy to have this chance to take a deep dive into the concept of it and your process.
It started during the pandemic when everything was locked down and, we were just shut up in our own houses, in our own tiny bubbles. It was beyond frustrating. Awful for so many people to be experiencing this illness, and for myself, frustrating to not be able to contribute in a way that could really make a difference. I'm not a frontline worker, a nurse or doctor, and what I have to offer society was silenced, no audience. I just felt useless, and it got me thinking, what can I actually be doing as a violinist when all of my regular avenues of connecting are shut down? I wanted to create something that contributed to the repertoire, the Canadian music scene, just coming out from the nothingness of my soul being in my living room by myself, and then growing out from there, what can all happen with the people that I'm connected to. I commissioned composers to write with this theme in mind, and had no idea what they were going to come up with in terms of their piece. But it's just all fit together so nicely that this one word has been investigated from all sorts of different angles. I'm just so happy with how it's all kind of come together as a full package.
Oh, the fox waits
I'm so curious, what instructions did you give to the composers? You mentioned the word, but anything other than that?
That was basically it. The themes, Sustenance. Once I got in touch with everybody, these are the other people that I'm going to be working with. Everyone was so supportive and so enthusiastic about it. It was more just about, okay, how long is your piece going to be? And it's like kind of incredible that somehow with all these 9 pieces on the album, it adds up to 73 minutes. 74 is the max.
That's amazing. An artistic project can take on its own collective soul and mind meld with everyone involved.
Totally.
This album features an all-star cast of composers and performers, including some of my personal favorites. So we hear composer pianist Serouj Kradjian and David Braid, both as composers and pianists on this album, and narration and compositions by Karen Sunabacka. Works by Chris Dirksen, Kelly Marie Murphy, Aman Habibi, Carmen Braden. Did I miss anyone?
I think that's it.
That's everyone. Wow, so many of my absolute favorite creators on this album. How did you go about selecting collaborators for this project?
That was really tough because there are so many fantastic people out there, people that I really admire and do amazing work. The fact that both David Braid and Serouj Kradjian play piano and compose just seemed like a really obvious fit. I reached out to Serouj and it took a while to get back to him. He's a very busy person. When he said yes, I was so excited. Yeah, Tango Melancholico is perfect for one of his compositions because he's a star in the tango world. I heard a clip of him performing on Instagram and the melody was so poignant. I thought this would sound great for violin and piano. So that was really nice that he's willing to work it for our instrumentation. And with David Braid, actually, I started working with David a while back. He helped with composition for my summer music camp, the Rosamunda Summer Music Academy. And he was sending me some scores, and the Interior Castles was one of the scores he sent me when I was looking into music to perform during the pandemic. And so that's where I came in touch with that piece. I had this feeling that no one would really play it the way he plays it. So yeah, that worked out really well that he was able to be a part of the recording sessions too, and then joined the slate as well. Yeah, a process for sure, and it all worked out really well.
So special to have the composers themselves making music with you.
His music was essential, was medicine, was a kind of communion, bringing together elders, family, friends, children, and grandchildren. Jack worked until his early death, and as he took his last breath, the music accompanied him. To this day, people remember the boy who played at the dances for his friends, who laughed and grieved with them, who welcomed all and made music to share. Ah, yes, they say, we remember Jack the fiddler.
So I don't think we talk about this enough in the musical world, which is strange because it's so integral to what we do. What does a successful artist-composer collaboration look like, and a respectful, productive, and healthy collaboration?
I think it depends on a lot of things. My goal as a musician is to serve the composer's vision for their piece. I just want to make it come alive in the most vivid way possible. I consider it such a privilege to have the composer right there, you know. I think that's always an honor. On the side of the composer, it's a bit of a double job to be the composer and the performer. They're managing their own part and then at the same time evaluating what I'm doing and wanting to give me feedback so that it's coming out the way they want it. It is like doing double duty. But on the other hand, they have that control, right? And I think having that extra element of control would be satisfying. And it's just so fun. Like there's a lot you just can't write down. We do our best with notation, with Western music notation. We try and get super specific and write all these dots and dashes and phrasing. But there's nothing like having it coming straight from them. The ebb and flow, the rubato, the rhythmic articulation, all that stuff. Yeah, it's pretty special.
And as you started to see this project take shape over multiple years, what was that process like? Were there growing pains as an artist, or were there pivots that you had to make, realizations or triumphs? What was that inner journey of bringing this personal artistic venture to life?
Yes. I'm just laughing because it has been in the works for 3 years. I'm not a very patient person. And I'm not a very tech-savvy person either.
Same here, both on both accounts.
It has been incredible to learn about the process of making a recording. You decide who you're collaborating with. You know what your repertoire is going to be. I mean, even the commissioning process. What are these pieces going to turn out like? Each one has its own different challenges. Getting to know each piece in and of itself. I can't even describe how much I've learned. I never thought I would have to know. But I love it. I love learning. I think it's something that keeps us really alive and growing. From booking the recording studio where we're going to record, we actually ended up having 2 pianos because Serouj loves playing on Fazioli and David is a Steinway artist. Mm-hmm. So we had 2 pianos in there. I had to sing for one of the pieces, so we had to have a microphone set for that. One of the pieces has me coming from a distance. How are we going to do that? How loud should the voiceover be for Chris Dirkson's Country Food for Violin and Tape? I didn't make it easy for myself, really.
You set yourself some challenges to overcome.
Yeah, it could have been much simpler. I wouldn't have it any other way, really. If there's anybody out there who is thinking about making a recording, my biggest piece of advice is just don't be afraid to ask for advice. People are so generous, and the composers were so helpful in just helping me steer around whatever corners came up. And it's not over yet. I think I'm still going to be learning from this project down the road. It's been very enriching, for sure.
Yeah, I always say to myself in times when I feel overwhelmed by the learning curve that music is a lifelong apprenticeship if you're willing to learn from it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Food insecurity among Inuit in Canada has been called one of the longest-lasting public health emergencies in Canadian history. 3 in 4 adult Inuit in Nunavut are food insecure. As food insecurity continues to increase, it is clear that current strategies are failing. They are failing because food security in the North cannot exist without food sovereignty. Food sovereignty is the right to culturally appropriate food harvested through ecologically sound and sustainable methods. Food sovereignty in Inuit Nunangat can only be met when Inuit have control over their own food system. The path to achieving a food sovereign system has been researched, recorded, and delivered to our governments by Inuit leadership in recent years. It has also been identified as a key step towards reconciliation. sovereignty asserts that people have a right to local food. Despite the myth that the Canadian Arctic is a barren food desert, there is, in fact, a vibrant local food system in the north that could be used to address this crisis. In Nunavut, locally sourced food is country food, and food producers are Inuit hunters. Country food comes from the land and sea and includes Arctic char, seal, muskox, caribou, whale, walrus, clams, berries, to name just a few. Country foods are extremely nutritious and widely preferred to store-bought foods. Prior to colonization, Inuit moved with the seasons, ensuring that a steady source of country food was always available. Acting as environmental stewards, hunters protected the land and waters to ensure the survival of their communities. With their communities now facing the highest levels of food insecurity in the country, hunters are the frontline workers keeping people fed through the use of sharing networks. Beginning in the mid-1900s, colonial powers attempted to destroy Nunavut's food system. A series of federal policies disconnected Inuit from the land and altered their way of life. As a result of these policies and the culling of their sled dogs, hunters had to purchase snowmobiles and gas if they wanted to hunt and feed their families. To be able to purchase these items, hunters were forced to participate in the wage economy, further disconnecting them from the land. Prior to these colonial policies, prolonged periods of food scarcity among Inuit were extremely rare. Today, hunting is very expensive, and many hunters have to subsidize the activity by working a 9-to-5. This limits the amount of time hunters can spend out on the land and the freedom to harvest when the weather and movements of animals are right. As hunting becomes more expensive and more hunters are forced to participate in the wage economy, hunting is declining in Nunavut. As a result, there is less country food distributed through sharing networks and more people relying on store-bought food. To achieve food sovereignty, we must move away from policies that only seek to address food security. Food insecurity in Nunavut was created by colonial powers, and current policies have only seemed to perpetuate the issue. To achieve food sovereignty, we must make sure that Inuit have a say in all decisions affecting their land and food system. We must listen, and we must act.
For so many of us artists, now that I have a couple decades of runway behind me in a music career. I can see definitive turning points in my career and artistic path that led me in a certain way. Life circumstances or doors closing or unexpected opportunities presenting themselves. And then that ended up being something that truly shaped my career path and trajectory. Looking back for yourself, were there any particular turning points in your life and career that have helped shape you as an artist that you can see maybe have contributed to this project?
That's a big question.
Sorry. I could take it in bits and pieces.
I think we often praise youth and the excitement of a young artist being in their 20s and cutting their teeth on the big repertoire. Media or society doesn't necessarily focus on mid-career or late career triumphs that people experience. There's special beauty in slow growth. This is definitely a turning point for me making this album. The idea that a woman like me who has had this fairly stable and predictable existence as a mother, as a parent, as a violinist with the Winnipeg Symphony. You know, I have had this Rosamunde Summer Music Academy going on here in Winnipeg for 15 years next year. I've always had chamber music on the side, some sort of projects happening. Those have always been very life-giving. To dream something up like this, I don't think it would have happened without the time offered by COVID to ponder with my art, with what I've chosen to dedicate my life to, what I got a Concertexamen from Germany in. I went through a difficult time personally getting divorced, and that has shaped who I am and what I'm going to be doing now. The personal is definitely reflected in the professional, and the strength we need to carry us through harder times can offer the strength to tackle dreams or goals in life, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you the most proud of when you look back on the journey of creating this album?
Well, I don't know if pride is the word, but I'm just so happy and joyful about it. It just gives me a lot of joy that this is coming out, especially now. I'm so proud to be Canadian. I'm proud of my home country and the values of community relationships, the different aspects that each of these pieces offers. The value of offering of water, like we need our water. Canada's known internationally for its amazing resource of fresh water. This is something we have to value and protect. I'm really proud of how the album is relevant to what we're dealing with right now. Yeah.
As this album is released into the world in both digital form and live performance, what do you hope folks take away from their experience of it?
Yeah, I hope it opens their world or their mind or their imagination. I think that's the beauty of music. It can be seen as a passive intake. You're just sitting there in live concert. We don't typically have a dance party going on. But I think the reason people appreciate listening to music is because of what it does to their mind. Maybe it helps them study better or gives them some kind of solace or comfort, or maybe it inspires them and helps them to dream about something, or there's so many different ways it can go. I think with this album, there's a discovery element. It gives me great joy to introduce these composers to people. Maybe they're a fan of one of the composers on the album, so they want to listen to the album because of that one composer, but then they didn't know about this one, and so then they can explore something they may not have come into contact with otherwise. So to discover what's out there, get a cross-section of some of the amazing composers that are out there. There are so many more people that I would have loved to have, that could easily be volume 2, 3, 4.
I was going to start some sequels on the horizon.
Well, I'm still feeling a bit overwhelmed just getting it out. But yeah, there's definitely more to this type of repertoire. And it's really fun to look at it and to see also what some of these pieces will pair well with in the standard repertoire,
Yeah.
What avenues those different aspects can take.
And building out the violin canon of repertoire.
Yeah. I'm going to be excited to hear other people play these pieces, and I think there's going to be demand for these scores because, very great quality.
So I bumped into you shortly after you received some of the mock-ups of your album art. That was a very fun conversation. You showed me a couple of them. How did you land upon the final design, and what kind of instructions did you give to the visual artist? Because it's just stunning and there's so much intricacy to it.
Oh, yeah. It was, first of all, hard to choose what direction to go with this process of cover art. I have some very dear artists in my friend. I have some in my family too, Christina Baranetsky and Leonard Schlichting, beautiful artists. A lot of this work related to this album has been elsewhere. Mm-hmm. I recorded in Toronto. David Braid and Serouj Kradjian live in Toronto. I'm from Winnipeg, and here in Winnipeg we have this amazing visual artist named Roberta Landreth. The Landreth brothers are closely connected to her. She's married to one of the brothers and has been doing a lot of work for their album covers. This year she's done the artwork for the Winnipeg Folk Festival. I've been seeing her artwork on Instagram and thought, I love this stuff. Why don't I reach out to her and see what this process could look like? I had no idea. It was fascinating. She has a great process. We had an hour-long talk about it. She asked me amazing questions and listened to the entire album. And then she came up with 4 different options for the design. This was the one that was just like right away, like, yes. We tweaked a couple of little things. It's very closely tied to the works, and you can see the foxes there from Foxy Fox and the fiddle sort of elements in it, and there's actually little castles in there too. So it's very organic, I would say.
Is each piece represented visually in the graphic?
Yeah, actually, believe
Amazing.
it or not. It's pretty subtle, some of them. Like to Roberta, Fire and Ice. I don't know if you've read much about that piece. So that full title is Fire and Ice, Body Doubled Up Withdrawal Anxiety.
That's a mouthful. Say that a few times fast.
I know. It's so hard to remember all those words. But Kelly Marie Murphy wanted to explore what happens when we go too far with what we consider necessary. We are a society addicted to things like smartphones, as well as substances and even people. When these elements are removed, we experience sadness, anger, and fear that actually affects our ability to sustain ourselves. The snake in the middle represented our cravings and our addictions and the things that we are tempted by that aren't going to sustain us in the long run.
Right.
And then
profound and important message.
And it's right there at the center. Mm-hmm. There's the dancing tangos. The tango position is perhaps not with arms up, but you can see the dancing element. The little spider is a reference to Foxy Fox and the offering of water with the jugs being poured out, the country food with the seals within the water. And the Girl from the Mountain, Sari Aghtchig, that is a song about a lost love or the separation between two people who love each other dearly but can't be together. That's where the bird cage and the bird are sort of...
Oh, I see.
Did I cover everything? It's all wrapped up in this image. And also shows the creative process of the artist being in this cocoon waiting to bring forth some fruit.
Yeah, I love that multi-layered meaning, the pieces and the artwork itself.
Yeah, it's fun to work with Roberta for sure.
Amazing. Is there anything else you wanted to convey to us about the album or your work?
It's been an honor and a privilege to work with each of these composers and with Serouj and David. I couldn't have done any of it without the support of the Canada Council for the Arts, the Winnipeg Arts Council, and my friends, mm-hmm. You know, SOCAN as well with one of the commissions. But really, friendship is so valued, and the people who have encouraged me to dream and pursue my dreams. I think we all need a cheerleading team behind us.
Absolutely.
And I'm so thankful that I have these kinds of people in my life. It really resonates with people and that people enjoy listening to it, that they get something out of it. It's been a crazy ton of work, but knowing that these pieces will be out there now for other audiences to hear is worth it.
Wonderful. Elation Pauls, thank you so much for being my guest today on Musing and sharing your incredible work, and we'll eagerly anticipate the release of Sustenance happening live in Winnipeg and online. I believe it's May 13th. Is that correct?
That's the day. We're going to have a great time that day.
It's going to be incredible. Thank you so much for sharing your spirit and your art with us. Such a pleasure, and all the best with the release.
Thank you so much, Janna. Great to be here chatting with you.
You've been listening in on my conversation with violinist Elation Pauls, discussing her recent solo album, Sustenance, which will be released on the German Spektral label and dropping on all online platforms beginning May 13th. This has been Musing on CJSW 90.9 FM in Calgary. Thank you for joining me for this deep dive into Canadian music and conversation. It's a privilege to share creativity and ideas with you on this platform. Musing is a production of the Canadian Music Centre Prairie Region, and we gratefully acknowledge and pay tribute to the original music makers of our region, the peoples of Treaty 7, which include the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprised of the Siksika, the Piikani, and the Kainai First Nations, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bears Paw, and Goodstoney First Nations. The city of Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Districts 5 and 6. Thanks for listening and for supporting Canadian artists and live music